Picture a factory that manufactures the one product no machine has ever made: belief. Now fill it with carpenters hammering cathedrals out of plaster and chicken wire, with painted ships sailing on canvas oceans, with 400 beautiful hungry people standing in line outside a casting office before the sun is properly up. Add the smell of hot carbon arc lamps and horse manure and orange blossom, all in the same breath. Add men whose entire job is to follow famous faces through their private days and make sure nothing true about them is ever printed. Add a locked filing cabinet in a publicity office that can end a career with one thin folder. That's Hollywood at the end of 1921. A farm town wearing a crown. Lemon groves at one end of the boulevard, searchlights at the other. A place where you could pick a ripe fig off a neighbour's tree on your walk to work and then watch Babylon burn to the ground after lunch, on schedule, twice, because the director wanted a second take. A place that sold the whole world a dream of perfect faces and employed some of the most careful people who ever lived to make sure the world never saw what the faces did when the camera stopped. We're going back there tonight, not as tourists craning at premieres and footprints in wet cement. We're living it. One day, one person, and then the long strange year that followed. Everything they would have seen, smelled, heard, and survived. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I still have no idea whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just lying there in the dark, wide awake, waiting to hear about burned letters and morality clauses, and the men who were paid very good money to make sure two particular names never appeared in the same sentence. Either way, subscribe if you feel like it. Get comfortable. Here we go. The telephone is ringing. It has been ringing for a while, you realise. The sound has been sewing itself into your dream, a thin, persistent rattle 2 floors down, and now it drags you up out of sleep the way a hook drags a fish, and you are lying in the dark with your heart going too fast, listening. The hall telephone. 4:30 in the morning, or near it. Nobody calls a boarding house full of studio girls at 4:30 to share good news. You hear Mrs. Herlihy's door open below, the creak of the 3rd stair, her voice muffled, saying, "Yes, yes, this is the house." Then her feet on the stairs, heavier than her 60 years should allow, and the knock you already know is coming lands on your door like 2 dull stones. Wardrobe girls for Meridian. They want you at the gate by 6. Companies shooting at sunrise, whatever that means, when a Christian ought to be asleep. That's all. Her feet retreat. Somewhere down the hall another door creaks. Another girl groans. For half a second you don't know where you are. Then the smells arrange themselves around you in the dark, in layers, the way they do every morning, and the world comes back. Cold face cream and powder from the dressing table you share. Gas from the little heater with its broken valve that nobody will fix. Eucalyptus, sharp and medicinal from the big trees along the street, breathing in through the gap under the window. Damp wool, which is your own skirt, sponged and hung up wet last night because it has to last the week. And underneath all of it, faint and constant, the smell of oranges. In this town, in this year, you can never entirely get away from the smell of oranges. Welcome to Hollywood, California. It is Tuesday, the 15th of November, 1921, and the day is starting 2 hours early. You're lying on a narrow iron bed with a mattress like a folded newspaper, in a second-floor room of a boarding house on Cahuenga Avenue, just below Franklin, in a district that 10 years ago was quiet farmland with a church and a temperance colony, and is now the most famous small town on the face of the earth. Your name is Ruth Cotter. You are 19 years old, and you arrived here 19 months ago from Terre Haute, Indiana. with your grandmother's steel sewing shears wrapped in a petticoat, $11, and an address for a cousin who, it turned out, had moved to Fresno. Back home, everyone said California would swallow a girl like you whole. They weren't wrong. They just didn't know that being swallowed can feel on certain mornings exactly like being chosen. Across the room, the other bed makes a sound like an argument, and Dot sits up with her hair standing off her head in a copper haze. Dorothy Muir, script girl at Meridian, 3 years older than you, 5 years wiser, from Winnipeg by way of Chicago. She holds the record, as far as you know, for the fastest a human being can go from fully asleep to fully sarcastic. Sunrise shot, she says, in a voice like a rusted hinge. Some genius looked at the fog and got inspired. You know what fog means. Wet hems. Wet hems, she agrees, and swings her feet onto the cold floorboards. 40 extras in wet hems, and every one of them my personal problem by 9 o'clock. Yeah, you share a room, and until last spring you shared the bed too before the second cot came. That's normal. Most studio girls double up. A room to yourself on $16 a week is a luxury nobody at your level can afford. And Mrs. Herlihy's is considered a good house. Clean, respectable, no gentleman above the parlour floor, breakfast included if you're quick and merciless. You wash your face at the basin. The water is cold enough to make your teeth ache, and it smells faintly of iron. You do it fast, the way you've learned, splash, soap, splash, because standing wet in a cold room is how girls catch the grip, and a wardrobe girl with a running nose does not touch a star's costume, and a wardrobe girl who doesn't touch costumes doesn't get paid. Your clothes are where you left them, hung with the care of somebody who owns very little and intends to keep it presentable. A shirtwaist, mended at the cuff so neatly you'd need a glass to find it, because you mended it, and mending is the one thing on this earth you do better than almost anyone. A grey wool skirt still damp at the hem, stockings darned at both heels, boots with a sole that needs the cobbler and won't see him before payday, and your coat. The coat is your one bit of pride. Navy blue, good tight weave, cut down by your own hands from a lady's coat bought for $1 at a church sale, and it fits you the way clothes in this town fit the people on the screen. Nothing fancy. But it marks you to anyone with eyes as a girl who works with her hands at a trade, not a girl standing in the casting lines hoping to be looked at. Appearances matter in this town. I need you to understand that they matter here the way water matters in a desert. This whole town is one single industry, and the industry manufactures appearances, and everyone in it, from the man getting $3,000 a week down to the girl getting 16, is judged always by exactly what they appear to be. You will spend this entire year learning what that sentence really means. Before you go, you do the thing you do every morning. You kneel at the bottom of the wardrobe behind your Sunday shoes and touch the cold cream jar. It's a big white china jar, and it has not held cold cream for over a year. It holds $34, folded small, mostly in ones, and a picture postcard of the courthouse square in Terre Haute. $34 is 2 months of your mother's mortgage payments back home, or one steamship ticket to nowhere, or the difference between a bad month and a disaster. Nobody knows it's there except you. Every person in this town has a jar like that somewhere. Most of them don't hold money. Downstairs, Mrs. Herlihy has coffee going, oily and bitter and scalding, and you drink a cup standing up at the kitchen table while she tells the ceiling that in her day the pictures were a nickel and the actors were ashamed of themselves, as was proper. You eat a heel of bread with margarine. Dot eats two, on the principle, she says, that sarcasm burns more than you'd think. Then you're out the door into the dark and the cold hits you. That particular Southern California November cold, dry and clean, and smelling of dust and eucalyptus, and yes, oranges, a cold that people back in Indiana would not even dignify with the name of winter, and which everyone here discusses as though it were the Yukon. The fog is real, though. It lies along Hollywood Boulevard in long grey bolts, like yardage unrolled off God's own counter, and the street lamps stand up out of it, with halos on. You and Dot walk down Cahuenga to the boulevard to catch the streetcar, and even at 5:20 the town is not asleep. It is never entirely asleep anymore. A produce truck grinds past, headed for the market downtown. Two men in overalls stand outside a lunchroom that isn't open yet, smoking, waiting, carpenters by the folding rules sticking out of their pockets. A milk wagon, still horse-drawn, the hooves ringing on the pavement so loud in the fog that the sound seems to come from everywhere at once. And down at the corner, under the lamp, three girls are already standing with their good shoes wrapped in newspaper under their arms, waiting for the same car you're waiting for, going to stand in the same casting lines they stood in yesterday. 5 years ago, they'd have been the strangest sight in California. Now, they're furniture. The whole world has read the magazine stories. The whole world knows that a Denver waitress with the right chin is out here making $1,000 a week. And so the whole world's daughters keep arriving at the depot downtown on every train. The Chamber of Commerce took out advertisements begging them to stay home. They come anyway. Between 80 and 100 a week, somebody at the studio said, though nobody's counting, and the casting offices could not employ a tenth of them on the best day this industry ever had. The streetcar comes up out of the fog with its one great eye, brakes screeching, and you climb aboard and drop your nickel in the box. The car is already half full. Carpenters, painters, two cowboys in actual working spurs who ride in from Edendale for picture work, a woman with a hat box on her knees, asleep sitting up. Everybody on this car is going to the same industry. There is no other industry. That's the thing about this town that nobody back home could ever quite believe. The whole place, the banks, the lunchrooms, the churches, the real estate men, the cobbler who will eventually fix your boot sole, all of it lives off the making of shadows. Dot falls asleep against the window before Highland. You watch the boulevard slide past, pepper trees and vacant lots and brand new brick blocks with signs going up, and you do what you do most mornings, which is run the day ahead through your head like thread through a needle. Because today isn't an ordinary day, even leaving aside the fog. Today, Meridian Pictures is shooting the last scenes of a picture called The Silver Rider, and tonight the front office is giving a supper for the New York money men, and between those two things stands the entire wardrobe department, which is to say Mr. Kessler, Mrs. Novak, 4 seamstresses, 2 boys for hauling, and you. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, though you don't know it yet, this day is going to hand you the first thread of a thing you will spend the next year learning not to see, and learning to see, and learning, finally, to carry the way everyone in this town carries it. Quietly. The car sways south down Vine, past the long-frame barn where Mr. DeMille shot the first big feature in this town 7 years ago, when they had to rent the barn because there was nothing else to rent, and men stood in the road laughing at the picture people. Nobody's laughing now. The barn is still there. Empires in this town are 7 years old and act 700. You get off 2 blocks from the Meridian lot and you can already hear it. even in the fog, even before 6 in the morning, hammering. Somewhere behind that long white fence, somebody is always hammering. Whole kingdoms are going up behind that fence, and other kingdoms are coming down, and the lumber from the coming down kingdoms will be pried apart, denailed, stacked, and built into kingdoms not yet imagined. The fence runs along the street for 1/4 of a mile, whitewashed blank, with the studio's name in 7-foot letters, and at the middle of it stands the gate. The gate is where the two worlds touch. Outside it, even this early, even in fog, stand the hopeful. A dozen of them already, extras and would-be extras, collars turned up, faces arranged in expressions of confident readiness that fool nobody, least of all the gateman, whose name is Albert, who has seen 10,000 such faces and waves through exactly the ones on his list. Inside it, the factory. "Morning, Albert," Dot says, and he touches his cap and swings the pedestrian gate for the two of you. And just like that, past the eyes of a dozen people who would trade years of their lives to walk through it, you go to work. And whatever else is true of this crowded, frightened, dazzling year that never stops being a small daily miracle, the gate opens for you. You're nobody. You're a mending girl at $16 a week. But the gate opens for you. Hold on to that feeling. The rest of the day is going to complicate it. The Meridian lot covers little over 20 acres, which makes it a middling studio, bigger than the shoestring outfits crowded along Poverty Row over on Gower Street, where they shoot a whole western in 5 days for $5,000, and much smaller than the giant plants, the 60-acre kind, with their own fire departments and their own zoos. Meridian has 2 enclosed stages, a glass stage left over from the early days when pictures were shot by sunlight through glass roofs, a back lot with a Western Street and a New York Street and half a Spanish Mission, a carpenter shop, a plaster shop, a garage, a commissary, a row of offices with actual carpets, and at the far southeast corner, downwind, where the front office decided nobody important would ever have to smell it, the wardrobe building. You love the wardrobe building the way some people love churches. It's a long 2-story frame structure, and inside it is the entire dressed history of the human race, folded, hung, tagged, and breathing out its smell, which is the first thing that meets you every morning when you come through the door. Wool and cedar and benzene, dye and machine oil and starch, old sweat that no cleaning ever entirely removes from a costume, and under it all the hot metal smell of pressing irons that are never fully cold. Racks run the length of the ground floor like hedgerows. Roman armour next to frock coats. A rack of nuns' habits next to 40 matched cavalry uniforms. 800 pairs of shoes on shelves, sorted by period and size. Nobody who works here ever says the building is magnificent, and everybody who works here knows it is. And at a cutting table near the front windows in the white light of the fog stands Mr. Kessler. Emil Kessler is the head of wardrobe, and he is the reason Meridian's pictures look $500,000 richer than they are. He's a small man, maybe 5'5", 60 years old, bald as an egg, with gold-rimmed spectacles and forearms like a dock hand's, because he was cutting coats in Vienna when your mother was born, and heavy shears do to a forearm what oars do. He can look at an actor walking across the lot once at 40 feet and tell you his chest, waist, sleeve, and inseam within a ½ inch. You have seen him do it. There is a standing bet in the commissary, and Mr. Kessler has never lost it. He does not look up when you come in. He never looks up. "You're late," he says. You are not late. You are 11 minutes early. He says it every morning, to whoever comes through the door first, and you have long understood that it is not an accusation but a philosophy. In Mr. Kessler's world, there is no such thing as early. There is only the width of the disaster that hasn't happened yet. Fog holds till maybe 8:30, he says, still cutting. The shears go through $14 a yard of silver lame without a sound. They want the churchyard scene in it. Riders, 40 extras, the girl, and Mr. Ashton. Everything is on the trucks except what is wrong, and what is wrong you will now go and learn. This is how Mr. Kessler assigns work, as though the work were a language, and you were being granted the privilege of studying it. What is wrong this morning is 3 cloaks with hems that took up damp in storage and dried crooked, 1 cavalry tunic missing a button that must match 7 other buttons of smoked brass, and a tear, small but in exactly the wrong place, in the riding coat that Mr. Jack Ashton will wear in close shots at sunrise. You take the riding coat because the riding coat is the hardest job, and because taking the hardest job without being told is the whole of your reputation in this building, such as it is. Let me tell you what a mending girl actually does, because the word sounds small, and the work is not. A costume in a moving picture is photographed by a lens that enlarges it to the size of a barn wall and shows it to 20 million people. A crooked seam that no dinner guest would ever notice becomes, on that wall, a crooked seam 9 feet long. So you learn to sew a repair that is invisible at 9 feet tall. You learn to match a weave so exactly that the camera, which is the most pitiless observer ever built by man, cannot find your stitches. You are, in a real sense, in the concealment trade. You make damage disappear, and the whole art is that no one must ever be able to tell anything was mended at all. Keep the seams on the inside. Mr. Kessler says it about coats. It took you most of this year to learn he was never only talking about coats. You spread Mr. Ashton's riding coat on your table under the window, and you go through the pockets, because you always go through the pockets before you work, because Mrs. Novak trained you to, on your second day, in her flat bohemian voice. An actor's pocket is a little museum of his day, and the wardrobe girl who empties it without looking is careless, and the wardrobe girl who looks too long is finished. You have found, in a year of pockets, cigarettes, racing stubs, a rosary, a live cartridge, 3 love letters not addressed to the wives of the men whose pockets they were in, and once, memorably, a live frog, whose story you never learned. This morning, in the inside breast pocket of Jack Ashton's riding coat, your fingers find a handkerchief. It is a beautiful thing, and you know cloth, so you know at once how beautiful. Irish linen, hand-rolled hem, laundered and pressed by somebody who cared. And in the corner, embroidered small and neat in white on white, so quiet you have to tilt it to the window to read it at all, a monogram, P'da to Jack Ashton's real name, which everyone on the lot knows because his checks have to clear, is John Aston. There is no P in it, and no W anywhere near it. You're 19, and you have been in this town 19 months, and here is the truth of that moment. You think nothing. A borrowed handkerchief, a friend's, a card partner's. You fold it once more along its ironed creases, and you carry it to Mr. Kessler because pocket contents go to Mr. Kessler. That is the rule. Everything found goes into the drawer at his cutting table and is returned by his own hand. He takes it without stopping his shears. Then the shears stop. It is very brief. His thumb moves once across the embroidered corner, the way your thumb moves across a rough spot in a seam. An assay, a reading. his face does nothing at all, and that nothing is itself a thing, because Mr. Kessler's face always does something. It disapproves of the weather, it despairs of the thread, it withers the incompetent at 40 feet. "I will return it," he says. "Mend the coat. That's all." The drawer opens and shuts. The shears resume. You go back to your table and you mend the coat, and the repair takes you 40 minutes, and when you're done, you cannot find it yourself without counting threads, which is the standard. And if some small stray thought is circling the ceiling of your mind like a moth, you do not look up at it. You have wet hems and smoked brass buttons ahead of you, and the fog will not hold past 8:30. 2 more things happen in the wardrobe building that morning that you will want later. File them away, the way you file a bolt end of cloth you have no immediate use for. The first, at 7, Mrs. Novak sends you out the back door to the incinerator with the week's burn basket. Every wardrobe department has one, a wire basket of true scraps, clippings too small to save, ruined trim, rags gone greasy with benzene. The incinerator stands behind the building, a squat brick furnace with an iron door, and the boy who tends it this early is you. You feed the scraps in and watch the silk go up in that fast, green-edged way silk goes, and you are back inside in 10 minutes smelling of smoke. It is the most ordinary chore in the building, remember it anyway. Before this story's over, you are going to stand at that iron door twice more, and neither time will be ordinary. The second, while you're pinning the last crooked hem, Mr. Brandt comes in. Carl Brandt is the head of publicity at Meridian, and he is the best-dressed man on the lot, which is a professional statement, the way a surgeon's clean hands are a professional statement. 40 or so, grey, at the temples in the way that photographs as trustworthy, a voice that never rises and never needs to. He is carrying nothing, and he is in no hurry, and both of those facts are, you will learn, part of his method. Men who carry papers can be asked what the papers are. Men who hurry are seen to hurry. He and Mr. Kessler speak by the cutting table, too low for the room to hear, and the seamstresses do the thing everyone on this lot does around Mr. Brandt, which is work slightly faster while appearing not to have noticed him at all. At one point Mr. Brandt puts his finger, lightly, on the big black ledger that lives at the end of the cutting table. That ledger is the measurement book, and it is Mr. Kessler's Bible and his life's archive. Every actor and actress who has passed through Meridian is in it. Chest, waist, hip, sleeve, rise. And in Mr. Kessler's tiny Viennese hand, notes, not gossip. Facts of the body and the fitting room, which are facts people share with a tailor that they share with no one else alive, because the tape measure cannot be lied to and everyone eventually stops trying. Who has a built-up left heel? Who is corseted into his uniforms and must never be shot from the side? Whose measurements swelled and shrank on a 6-week rhythm all last year, while the fan magazine said she was resting at a ranch? You're too far away to hear what Mr. Brandt asks. You're not too far to hear Mr. Kessler's answer, because Mr. Kessler makes sure of it, replying in the clear, unhurried voice of a man saying something he would repeat before a judge. The book keeps measurements, Mr. Brandt. It does not keep opinions. A pause. Mr. Brandt smiles, the smile of a man conceding a point in a game that is not over, says something pleasant, and leaves, touching his hat to the seamstresses, who all somehow fail to see it. The room breathes again. Nobody says anything. Mrs. Novak's machine takes up its rattle, and Mr. Kessler picks up his shears and goes back through the silver lame, and you go back to your hem, and that too you file away. In this factory of appearances there is one book that holds only the truth, and one man decides who reads it. And this morning, standing entirely alone in his little kingdom of cloth, that man told the front office no. At 7:45 the trucks are loaded, and because 2 costumes may need work on the spot, you ride out to the back lot with the last truck, sitting on a hamper with a tin of pins, a housewife roll of needles and thread, and Mr. Ashton's mended riding coat across your knees like a sleeping animal. The churchyard set stands at the far end of the back lot against the fog, and the fog has made it true. That is the only word. By afternoon light it is what it is. Plaster headstones and a chapel front with nothing behind it but bracing lumber and blue sky. But now, in this grey, drifting silence, with the crosses fading away in ranks into nothing, it could be Flanders, it could be a dream, it could be the actual past come up through the ground. 40 extras in dark cloaks stand among the stones, steaming faintly. Great silver reflectors loom at the edges like moons on stilts. The camera stands under its black hood at the centre of it all, and men speak quietly here, without being told to, the way men speak quietly in a real church. And off to one side, at an upright piano that has been wheeled out onto the dirt, on a kitchen chair wearing fingerless gloves, sits a thin young man playing Schumann. That's Paul Weiss. He is the set musician, and if you've never heard of such a job, understand. The pictures are silent, but the sets never were. Actors need feeling the way lamps need current, and so every company of any standing keeps musicians on the ground to play the scene under the scene. Paul is 26, was a picture house violinist in Cincinnati, plays piano and violin both, and possesses the specific genius his trade requires, which is knowing what a face needs before the face knows. Directors ask for him by name. What he is playing now, as the extras take their marks among the fog-bound crosses, is a piece you have heard him play so many mornings that it has worn a groove in you. Schumann's Träumerei, dreaming, a slow small tune that climbs one gentle hill, pauses at the top like a man remembering something, and comes down the other side resigned to it. You will hear that piece of music once more before this story ends, in a place so different from a dirt backlot that when it comes, it will close a door in your chest you didn't know was open. Not yet, though. Not for 11 months. Coat, says a voice, and you stand up off your hamper, because the voice belongs to Jack Ashton. Up close, the first thing about Jack Ashton is that the camera has not lied, which is rarer than you'd think. 31 years old, 6 feet, a face with that clean architecture the lens loves, and the pale eyes that photograph like weather. Meridian pays him $1,750 a week, which is to say, he earns your year every 10 days. He is, the fan magazines will tell you, the most eligible bachelor west of Chicago, a man's man, a horseman, married only to his art. The second thing about Jack Ashton, which the magazines will not tell you, is that he is kind in an unphotographed way. You hold the coat, he turns and takes it onto his shoulders, and then he turns back and looks at the place where the tear was, which is now nowhere. You did this. Yes, Mr. Ashton. He studies the sleeve a moment longer than he needs to. Fog beads very fine on the wool like seed pearls. My father was a saddler, he says. He'd have called this proper work. There's less of it about than people think. That's all. He walks into the churchyard, and the fog takes him to a silhouette, and the director calls something softly, and Paul leans into the piano, and the tune climbs its one gentle hill, and 40 cloaked figures bow their heads around a plaster grave, and the camera begins to turn, its little crank clicking like a fast clock, and for a minute and a half nobody in this corner of California breathes. You stand outside the circle with your tin of pins, watching a man be watched for a living. Remember him kind. It matters to what comes. The fog burns off at 20 to 9 on schedule, as though the weather itself were on the payroll, and the backlot goes from cathedral to construction site between one breath and the next. And when I say construction site, I need you to understand what a studio backlot is at 9 in the morning in 1921. This isn't a tidy modern workplace with everyone at an appointed station. This is a gold camp, a circus, and an army bivouac, all running through each other at a fast walk. The 40 extras come off the churchyard set and stream past you toward the wardrobe trucks, shedding character as they walk, and they are suddenly just people again. A retired railroad man, 2 Chapman girls from the casting line, a Russian who is said to have been a colonel of cavalry under the Tsar, and who now earns his bread fallen off horses at $5 a fall. Extras earn $5 a day, standard $7.50 if they supply their own evening clothes, and a box lunch. For most of them it is 2 days' work a week in a good week, and out of it comes rent and car fare, and the shoe shine and the clean collar without which the casting man won't look at you twice. Because even at the bottom of this industry the job is looking right. Past them, on the New York street, a crew is putting up the front of a bank that will never hold $1, and the smell of fresh plaster of Paris rolls off it in a wave, wet and chalky, mixed with turpentine from the painters, aging a brand new wall into a 50-year-old wall with dirty washes of umber. A property man walks past you carrying 6 plaster hams on a board. 2 carpenters carry a 12-foot section of ocean, painted on canvas, arguing about baseball straight through the middle of it. From the enclosed stage comes the whine of the big carbon arcs warming up, and that smell arrives too. Hot metal and something faintly violet. The smell of manufactured lightning. The smell that everyone who ever worked in silent pictures will carry in their nose to their grave. Somewhere a lion coughs, least probably from Gay's Lion Farm out in El Monte, here for a comedy 2-reeler. Nobody looks up. That is the measure of this place. A lion. And nobody looks up. You spend the morning at the wardrobe trucks checking in 40 cloaks, one by one, against the manifest because costumes walk. Wool walks especially. A good cloak is a winter coat for a man who has pawned his winter coat, and Mr. Kessler holds you answerable for the count, and so you count and recount, hands moving down the rack. 22, 23... the wool still cold and damp from the fog, your fingers reading each garment as it passes for damage the eye would miss. 2 hems need restitching. 1 clasp is gone. Count, tag, hang, next. It is dull, necessary work, and you are good at it, and there is a satisfaction in it that you've stopped being embarrassed about. The satisfaction of a small corner of the world made exactly right. At noon you eat at the commissary, which is a long frame hall with oilcloth tables where the whole strange nation of the lot feeds at once. Cowboys and Roman senators, electricians and ingenues, a bishop with his collar unbuttoned smoking a cigar. The stew is beef, mostly for 30 cents, and you try not to think harder than that about it, and it is hot and there is bread, which after some of the years this town has seen is not nothing. Dot drops onto the bench across from you with her script boards and a cup of coffee, and she doesn't say hello, because what she says instead, lo, is the thing everyone in this hall is saying in one form or another. Jury's still out in San Francisco. You know exactly which jury. Everyone in America knows which jury. There is one story in this industry's sky right now, and it hangs there like weather, and every conversation happens under it. Here is the shape of it, the shape everyone at this table knows by heart. On the 5th of September, Labor Day weekend, Roscoe Arbuckle, the second highest paid comedian on earth, a man with a $3 million contract, gave a party in a suite at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco. A young actress named Virginia Rapp was taken ill at that party and died 4 days later. And the district attorney charged Arbuckle in her death, and the newspapers, Mr. Hearst's above all, went at the story like a wolf pack at a dropped calf. 8 columns day after day, extra editions, every awful rumour printed as a question so it could be printed at all. Whatever did or did not happen in that suite, and the jury is out on it in the most literal sense, one thing has already happened. Everywhere, and there is no jury for it. The country has decided that this town is a sink. Pulpits from Maine to Oregon have preached on Hollywood by name. Women's clubs are passing resolutions demanding the pictures be cleaned up or shut down. In some states, Arbuckle's pictures have been pulled from the screens already. Trial or no trial, verdict or no verdict. Mrs. Herlihy took the Examiner off the parlour table, Dot says. Says she won't have it in the house where the girls can read it. Then she reads it in the kitchen. She says it dry, because Dot says everything dry. But her eyes aren't dry, they're worried, and you know why. It is very simple, and everyone at this oilcloth table can do the arithmetic. The pictures are the only industry in this town, and you both are the smallest, most replaceable parts of it. And when a boiler blows, it is not the engineers who go through the window. If the churches and the clubs and the legislatures decide to make war on this business, the business will save itself, and it will not save the mending girls. Eat your stew, you tell her, because that is what your mother would have said, and because there is nothing else to say. What you do not know yet, either of you, is that the men upstairs have already begun to build the machine that will save the business. You have, in fact, already seen a piece of it walk into the wardrobe building in a beautiful grey suit and touch one finger to Mr. Kessler's book. Over at Universal, since this spring, they have begun writing a new clause into players' contracts, the first of its kind anywhere. Behave in a way that offends public morals or decency, on the lot or off it, and the studio may cancel you entire with a stroke. The morality clause, people are already calling it. This year it is a novelty. Within a year it will be in contracts all over this town, and every player of consequence will live under it. And what it means, in plain cloth, is this. The studio no longer employs your working hours. It employs your life. Remember the stew, the oilcloth, Dot's worried eyes. That's the sound of the boiler, 2 rooms away, beginning to knock. At 1:30, Mr. Kessler hands you a folded requisition and $11 from the cash box and sends you downtown. Braid, he says. Gold, Russia pattern, the number is written. Steinfeld on Los Angeles Street. Nobody else. 60 yards. He will tell you he has something better. He has something dearer. It is not the same word. Downtown means the streetcar, and the streetcar downtown means the great red interurban cars of the Pacific Electric, which run out of Hollywood on their own tracks with a sound like tearing sheets, and cover the 7 miles to the city's heart in under half an hour. You ride with the requisition buttoned into your coat pocket and the window down, and the towns run past and into each other, bungalows and bean fields, oil derricks on a far hill nodding like patient birds, then the city rising 10 and 12 stories, the tallest of them all with its white tower at 7th and Broadway, and the car dives in among the traffic and the crowds and sets you down in a canyon of noise. Los Angeles is pushing 600,000 people this year, which nobody back in Terre Haute believes, and all 600,000 of them appear to be on Broadway between 1 and 2 in the afternoon. Motorcars 4 abreast, honking by way of conversation. The big yellow local cars grinding past nose to tail. Newsboys on every corner, and this fall the newsboys are all shouting the same word, and the word is Arbuckle. You pass the picture palaces, Grauman's $1 million with its stone saints and gargoyles, the Rialto, and here is a thing worth knowing. The palaces are downtown. Hollywood itself, the actual district, hasn't a single grand first-run house. Picture people joke that the town where the pictures are made is the hardest town in America to see one in. A showman named Sid Grauman means to fix that, people say. He is putting up a great house right on Hollywood Boulevard, all Egyptian columns and hieroglyphs, half built already. You have walked past the hoardings yourself. Keep that in your pocket too. It comes back at the end of this story, lit up like a bonfire. Steinfeld's, on Los Angeles Street, is a deep, narrow shop that smells of sizing and dye and camphor. Walls of little drawers to the ceiling, each drawer a nation of trim. Mr. Steinfeld is about 50, quick-eyed, in shirt sleeves and a very good waistcoat. And the negotiation goes exactly as Mr. Kessler said it would, which is one of the pleasures of working for a man who is never wrong about anything smaller than a war. He looks at the requisition number and shakes his head slowly, mournfully. A man breaking hard news. That pattern he has, yes, but he must tell you, he has a French braid, finer, richer on the screen, 28 cents the yard. The Russia pattern is 22 cents the yard. You know, because Mr. Kessler buys it every quarter, that Steinfeld's cost on it is around 14. At 22 he clears 8 cents a yard, on 60 yards, $4.80, which is honest. At 28 he would clear closer to $9, which is a different word. Mr. Kessler asked for the 407, you say, 60 yards. He said you'd offer the French, and he said, tell Mr. Steinfeld the camera can't see the difference, and Mr. Kessler can't pay for it. A pause. Then Steinfeld laughs, a real laugh, and starts pulling the drawer. 20 years that man buys from me. 20 years he sends me children who talk like him. He measures off 60 yards with the wooden yardarm bolted to the counter, whipping the braid across it in long practice strokes, and wraps it in paper, and charges you $13.20. And when you count out Mr. Kessler's 11 and look up, caught short, he waves his hand. On account. Tell him the difference goes on account like always. He knows. Then he leans on the counter and looks at you over the parcel. Studio girl. You like it out there, with the crazy people? Mostly. Read the papers lately? He shakes his head again, mournful again, but real this time. 20 years I sell to theatres, to costume houses, to the studios. Good people, most. Same as any street. Same as this street, he taps the counter. But the country needs somebody to be wicked for them, you understand. Somebody far away in the sunshine, rich. It's a service like any other. He pushes the parcel across. Careful they don't decide it's you. You carry the braid out into the roar of Broadway, and you stand for a moment on the corner with the parcel under your arm, in the crowd, under the shouted name of a fat, sad comedian 350 miles north, whose life is being decided by 12 strangers, and for the first time it comes to you not as a thought, but as a chill. The thing Steinfeld meant. The thing Dot's eyes meant. They are all watching us. All of them. The whole country. Leaning in at once, hungry, thrilled, furious. And a town that is watched like that cannot afford to be what it is. It can only afford to be what it appears. You ride the big red car home into the low golden light with the parcel on your knees, and the oil derricks nod, and the bean fields turn violet. And on the 4th of December, 3 weeks later, the jury in San Francisco comes back deadlocked. 10-2, no verdict, and the district attorney announces he will try Roscoe Arbuckle again. And in the front offices of every studio in this town, men who never raise their voices begin, very quietly, to prepare for a longer war. By then, you have been noticed. You don't know it, which is the only way that kind of noticing works. But the night of that first fog morning, back in November, the front office gave its supper for the New York money men, and wardrobe was made to lend a hand, and the hand that got lent was yours. You spent 5 hours in the cloakroom of a house up in Whitley Heights, taking coats, and in the pocket of one lady's ermine you felt through the silk lining a loose earring, a diamond thing that must have run to $800, working its way toward the open dark of the doorstep. You didn't fish it out, because a cloakroom girl with a hand inside an ermine is one photograph away from ruin, no matter what the truth is. You carried the coat, both arms, like an accident patient, to the lady's own maid, and said the pocket wanted looking at, and went back to your rack. You thought nobody saw. Mr. Brandt saw. Mr. Brandt is paid to stand where he sees, and what he saw was a girl who understood, without being taught, the whole architecture of appearances, that it is not enough to be honest. You must arrange to be incapable of being doubted. 2 weeks later, when he needed a parcel of photographs carried to a newspaper office by someone with clean hands and a plain face and no imagination, he asked Mr. Kessler for you by name. Mr. Kessler sent you. He also said one thing as you button your coat, not looking up from his cutting. Carry what they give you. Don't read what you carry. This is not a rule for their protection. December in Hollywood is a strange, sweet, wrong-feeling month for a girl from Indiana. No snow, no iron sky. None of that grey Midwestern cold that sits on a town like a lid. Instead, the poinsettia fields south of the boulevard come into bloom, whole acres of them, red as a parade, because this town grows Christmas the way other towns grow onions, and the nights come down chilly and enormous and smelling of pepper trees, and on Christmas Eve you and Dot walk home from the drugstore with hot chocolate in paper cups, and pass a crew stringing coloured bulbs across the front of Grauman's half-built Egyptian palace, and Dot says what everyone always says out here, which is that it doesn't feel real, and you say what you have started saying back, which is that nothing here does. That's the product. The last night of 1921, Meridian's general manager gives a party at his house in Whitley Heights, and once again wardrobe lends a hand, and once again the hand is you, with Mrs. Novak alongside, the two of you in grey at the mouth of the cloakroom off the tiled hall. And when I say a Hollywood party, at the end of 1921, in the 6th week of the Arbuckle affair, with the second trial set to open in 11 days, I need you to understand. This is not the party the Sunday sermons describe. There is champagne, yes, which is a felony now, prohibition being 2 years old, and which arrives anyway in a laundry truck, everyone's laundry arriving at 11 at night in ice. But the mood is not abandon. The mood is a garrison the night before a siege. Men in beautiful clothes stand in knots by the windows saying the same words over and over. Clubs, boycotts, censor boards, haze, 6 legislatures, and the women laugh half a beat late, and everybody watches the door. You take coats, coat after coat after coat, sable and camel hair and one motoring duster of oiled silk, each one warm from its person and smelling of its person, tobacco and gardenia and gasoline and rain, until your arms ache at the shoulder and your feet burn in your boots, and you fold each one over the padded rail exactly so, and you are invisible, which is the job. Nobody looks at a cloakroom girl. People say things across a cloakroom girl that they would not say across a telephone line, because the telephone might have an operator listening, and you are less than an operator. You are furniture that curtsies, which is how at 11:30, through the half-open glass doors to the side terrace, you come to hear Mr. Brandt teaching Jack Ashton the new arithmetic of his own life. You do not mean to hear it. You are hunting a lost overshoe along the back of the rack, and the rack stands against the terrace doors, and the 2 men outside are speaking in the low, level voices of men who believe themselves alone. And by the time you understand what you are hearing, standing up would be worse than staying still. So you stay still, one hand on a sable sleeve, and the sable smells of some warm animal dignity. And through the glass Mr. Brandt's voice comes as even as a metronome. The renewal is generous, he is saying. 1750 goes to 2000. But the clause comes with it now, the same clause everyone will have by spring, and Jack must understand what the clause means, because it does not mean what it says. What it says is public morals. What means is anything at all, at the studio's sole judgment, whenever the wind changes. It means, Mr. Brandt says, without heat, the way a man reads a timetable, that the arrangement with the house off Franklin is finished. It means Thursdays are finished. He says that word Thursdays, with nothing in it, and the silence after it is long. Then Jack's voice, and you have heard that voice fill a set, warm, easy, and it is not filling anything now. He says, he's careful. We've always been careful. And Mr. Brandt says the sentence you will carry for the rest of your life, the sentence that is this entire year of this entire town in 11 words. Careful was a private matter. It's a full-time job now. There is more and worse in its quiet way. Beginning this month, Mr. Brandt says, Jack will be seen with Miss Vane. Dinners, the fights on Friday nights, the premiere in the spring. The fan magazines will be given their material. A studio romance, discreet, dignified, 2 young people in no hurry. Miss Vane understands the business better than most, Mr. Brandt says. Nothing will be asked of either of them but appearances. As for the other matter, Paul is a fine musician, and there is no reason a fine musician cannot be engaged from time to time, like any tradesman, and no reason on earth he should ever again be a Thursday, a habit, an address. Habits photograph, Mr. Brandt says. Addresses photograph. And Jack Ashton, the most eligible bachelor west of Chicago, says, after a while, in a voice pressed flat as a pocket seam, and if I won't? Then you're a morals risk with a clause in his contract, Mr. Brandt says, still gentle, still even, a doctor naming the disease. And I'm the last friend you'll have in this business. I'd rather be the first. I'd genuinely rather, Jack. Glasses somewhere. The orchestra inside striking up. Feet on the terrace flags moving away. You stand in the dark of the rack with your hand in cold sable, and your heart is going like the camera crank. And here is what you feel, and I will tell it to you straight, because you were raised in Indiana on a straight Bible, and it would be easy to lie about you. You feel shock. Some of it is the plain shock of the forbidden thing, The thing you grew up hearing named only in scripture and never in a kitchen, that is in you. It was put in you early, and it does not dissolve in an evening behind a coat rack. But more of it, and this surprises you, is a different shock, older than scripture. The shock of watching a man's private heart put on a scale and weighed against a column of figures politely at a party by a man with no heat in his voice at all. You've mended that man's coat. He called your work proper. His father was a saddler, and 40 inches from your face, on a terrace over the lights of the whole glittering basin, he has just been informed, kindly, that from now on his life will be a costume, fitted by the studio, worn at all hours, never taken off. You think absurdly of Mr. Kessler's book. The tape measure cannot be lied to, and everyone eventually stops trying. Everyone, it turns out, except a whole town. At midnight, 1922 arrives, horns and bells rolling up the canyon from the boulevard, and the guests spill out for their coats in a laughing crush, and you hand out warmth and fur for an hour, curtsying invisible, and one of the last to come is a young woman in green velvet with tired, clever eyes, and this is Lila Vane, 24. Under contract at Meridian at $400 a week, which sounds like the moon and is the 7th rung of a 10-rung ladder. Kentucky, by her vowels, scrubbed almost away. On the screen she plays sisters and second leads and is better than her parts, and everyone says this year is her year, and everyone has said that for 2 years. Up close she has the thing the truly camera-born have, a face that seems slightly more in focus than the room around it. She takes her little velvet cloak and thanks you, which 1 in 4 does, and then she pauses and looks at you a moment, a mending girl at 1:30 in the morning with aching arms, and says, "Long night for you, honey," and puts a silver dollar in your hand, and is gone, out into the first hour of the year that is going to buy so much of her, down the tiled steps on Jack Ashton's arm, in front of a photographer whose flash powder goes off like close lightning, once, twice, while the two of them stand quite still, smiling, practised, his hand correct at her elbow, her chin at the angle that finds the light. The picture will run in February in photoplay, with a caption asking, coyly, whether spring is coming early at Meridian. You watch the flash smoke drift across the doorway, smelling of scorched metal and Chinese New Year, and Mrs. Novak comes and stands at your shoulder in the sudden quiet, wiping her hands on her grey apron, an old woman who has dressed opera companies and circuses and picture people on 2 continents. "So," she says, in her flat voice, watching the smoke. "Now that one also has 2 costumes. One for the camera outside, one for the camera that never turns off." She sighs and pats your arm once and goes to fetch the last coats. You ride home at 2 in the morning in the general manager's second car, packed in with Mrs. Novak and the hampers, and Hollywood slides past the windows all lit and horned and hopeful, and you hold Lila Vane's silver dollar in your fist until it is warm, and you do not tell anyone what you heard behind the coats. Not Dot sitting up in bed with cold cream on, not your mother in the Sunday letter, not even yourself quite for a while. You put the dollar in the cold cream jar, 42 now, and you lie in the dark listening to a lonesome motor car climb Cahuenga, and you think, it is a strange trade I am in. All day I make damage invisible, and it turns out I'm the smallest wheel in a machine that does nothing else, floor to ceiling, ocean to ocean. Keep the seams on the inside. You're beginning, only beginning, to understand what that cost the cloth. January is work. Blessed, drowning, ordinary work. The Silver Rider is cutting together up in the editing rooms, and the next picture, a society picture this time, modern dress, is already in wardrobe, which means 3 weeks of fittings, and fittings are your favourite weather in this trade, even when they leave you swaying on your feet. A fitting room is a truthful place. That is its secret. It is 8 feet by 10, one wall of mirrors, a platform in the middle like a small scaffold, and in it, for an hour at a time, the most looked at people in the world stand still and let themselves be seen. Really seen. Tape and chalk and pins. No flattering lens. No publicity man in the corner. You kneel at the platform edge with pins in your mouth and take up a hem a quarter inch at a time, and above you the person in the mirror slowly stops performing, because nobody can perform for a full hour. And what is left when the performing stops is a human being, tired, hungry on some diet, worried about a mother in Kentucky or a contract in March, making small, honest talk with the women fixing their clothes. On the 11th of January in San Francisco, they begin trying Roscoe Arbuckle a second time. The papers pick the bones of it daily. On the lot, people have stopped talking about it at lunch, not because they care less, but because they care more. There is a superstition abroad now, you can feel it, that the whole business stands under a raised hammer, and loud talk might bring it down. And then, on the second morning of February, the hammer comes down anyway, not on San Francisco. 3 miles from downtown in a quiet courtyard of stucco bungalows on Alvarado Street. You hear it the way this town hears everything, which is everywhere at once. You're walking up from the streetcar with Dot, a grey Thursday morning, and the newsboy at the corner of the boulevard is shouting a name, and the name is William Desmond Taylor. And Dot stops walking so suddenly that a man behind runs into her and doesn't even swear, because he has heard it too and is standing still himself. William Desmond Taylor, one of the best-known directors in pictures, a gentleman of the old school, president of the Directors' Association, found that morning on the floor of his bungalow sitting room by his own manservant, shot once through the back. Dead sometime the evening before, the 1st of February. No robbery, his money on him, no arrest. And as the days will prove, no arrest ever. It will never be solved. Not this year, not this century. I need you to understand what this does to a town already 6 months under siege, because it is not grief, or not mainly grief, though the man was liked. Within an hour of the newsboys, before any fact beyond the plain fact of death is known, every soul on that lot understands 2 things in their spine. First, the papers, which have fed on Arbuckle since September, have just been handed a second course, a murder, an unsolved murder, a murder in the picture colony itself, and they will print every rumour, every letter, every name found in that bungalow, and it will run for months, and it will be worse. Second, and this is the thing that makes the difference, the thing people outside never quite grasped. An investigation is a light that swings. It swings wherever it likes. Every person who ever dined with that courteous man, worked for him, wrote to him, is about to have their name read aloud in the hungriest year the press has ever had. And in this town, in this year, there is hardly a person of consequence whose whole life will bear reading aloud. The lot that morning is like a ship after the lookout calls ice. No panic. Worse than panic. Quiet. Doors that usually stand open are shut. The telephone exchange on the lot handles more calls before 10 o'clock, the operator will say later, than in any full day she can remember. And rumours begin that very week that will outlive everyone in this story. Rumours that studio men reach the bungalow among the first. that things were carried out of that house before the police understood what house it was, and whether or not those stories are true in the particular, here is what you know from your own eyes. Nobody on this lot doubts them in the general. Of course such men would come. Of course papers would leave. That is what the machine is for. You have carried its parcels yourself. Mr. Brant is not seen at Meridian for 3 days. When he reappears, he looks exactly as he always looks, which the whole lot finds more frightening than exhaustion would have been. And it is that Friday, with the Taylor headlines going off like artillery, morning and evening editions, 8 columns, that a man is waiting for you outside the gate at 6 o'clock with a notebook and a smile. He is youngish and neat, and he names a magazine you have heard of, and he walks along beside you very pleasantly, and this is what he says. They pay, he says, for atmosphere. Nothing low, nothing about the poor man on Alvarado Street. Just colour, the human touch, what the stars are really like. A wardrobe girl sees things. What they wear, sure, but who visits whom? Who's thick with whom? Little friendships, little habits, that address stuff. The readers love it. $50 for anything they print. 50, he says again, watching your coat, which he's priced within a dime, and your boots, which need the cobbler. A month of your wages, honey, for 10 minutes of remembering out loud. Who visits whom? Little habits, addresses. You think of a level voice on a terrace saying habits photograph, addresses photograph. You think of the drawer in Mr. Kessler's table and a square of Irish linen hand-rolled PW. You think with a clarity that surprises you, standing on the morning boulevard in your mended coat. So this is what the blade looks like when it is offered to your own hand. It looks like a nice young man and a month's wages. I sew, you say. I don't remember things. It's why they keep me. He laughs, gives you a card, tells you the offer stands. The card goes into the first storm drain on Vine, but walk through the gate with the truth. For 1 block and a half, 19 years old, $42 in a cold cream jar between your mother and a bank, you did the arithmetic. You did it. Everyone in this town has done it. That is the thing to understand about the year of the Great Fear, the thing the histories written from a safe distance leave out. The machine of silence was not held together only by cynical men in grey suits. It was held together by 10,000 small people, doing that arithmetic at 6 in the morning, and deciding, most of them, over and over, mostly for wages and partly for something better than wages, to keep the seams on the inside. That afternoon Mr. Kessler calls you to the cutting table. The Taylor extra is folded on it, headline down, and his spectacles are pushed up on his bald head, and for once the shears are lying still. A man came to Mrs. Novak also, he says. Last month one came to Janos in the paint shop. There will be more. So, now I will tell you the thing once, and then we will cut the grey crepe, because the fitting is Tuesday, whatever fools do. He polishes his spectacles on his sleeve, small circular movements, watching the middle distance. In Vienna I dressed the court opera. Great people came through my fitting room, girl, archdukes. I will tell you what a tailor is. A tailor is a man whom everyone must stand in front of undressed. 1 hour, 2 hours, in strong light. And so, a tailor ends his life knowing more secrets than a police bureau. Every trade that touches the body is such a trade. The tailor, the doctor, the barber, the maid. And in every such trade there is the same one law, older than any contract, and the law is, the fitting room has no windows. Not because the secrets are shameful. Most secrets are not shameful. Most secrets are only tender. A man's built-up shoe, a girl's real age. Where a heart is actually given, which is never, in my experience, where the photographs say. tender things, private things, the true measurements of a life. People show them to us because they must show them to someone, and we are the ones who swore, without any oath, not to sell. He puts the spectacles back on and looks at you through them. Small blue eyes, perfectly steady. The ones out there, a slight motion of the bald head, taking in the gate, the newsboys, the whole leaning-in country, call this town wicked, and there is wickedness in it. The same as Terre Haute, the same as Vienna, no more, no less. But I will tell you where the actual wickedness is this year. It is in the selling of tender things. Remember who buys, girl. Nobody ever bought a secret to keep it. Then the shears come up off the table, and the lesson is over forever. He never speaks of it again. Grey crepe, he says. You cut the sleeves. If you cut them like Tuesdays, you will finish your career mending horse blankets on Gower Street. You cut the sleeves. They are good. He looks at them a long time, 10 full seconds, and says nothing at all. And from Mr. Kessler, 10 seconds of nothing is a parade in your honour down the whole length of Hollywood Boulevard. On the 3rd of February, the second Arbuckle jury comes back the way the first one did, hung, no verdict, and the district attorney, unbelievably, announces he will try the man a 3rd time. The papers by now have Taylor on page 1 and Arbuckle on page 3, and room for both, and appetite for both. In Washington and in the state capitals, there is talk of censorship laws with teeth in them. 32 censorship bills, someone says, pending in the legislatures of the states, and church campaigns are pulling in signatures by the 100,000, and somewhere back east. The heads of all the big companies, men who hate each other cheerfully all year round, are meeting like allied generals, because the industry has finally and fully understood that it is one bad season away from being governed by other people. They are about to hire themselves a czar, and on the lot, in the cold, clear February light, the fittings go on, and the hammering goes on, and Paul Weiss plays love scenes for the society picture from 10 to 4 with his gloves off. Chopin mostly now. And if his eyes follow anyone across the stage floor, nobody sees it, because nobody can afford to see it. And Jack Ashton dines on Friday at the Alexandria downtown where he can be seen, with Miss Lila Vane, in a grey suit whose sleeves you cut, and the flash powder goes off like summer lightning over the white tablecloths, and 20 million readers leaning in, hungry, get exactly the picture they paid for. The picture is beautiful. You pressed it yourself. In March, the Tsar arrives. His name is Will H. Hayes, and until January he was Postmaster General of the United States, a member of the President's own cabinet, an Indiana man, as it happens, born in Sullivan, 60 miles from your mother's kitchen, a small, brisk, jug-eared Presbyterian elder who has never made a picture in his life, which is precisely the point of him. The big companies have banded together into a new association, the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, and they have hired Mr. Hayes to stand at the head of it, at a salary the papers print with a kind of awe, $150,000 a year. $3,000 a week to be, in effect, the industry's conscience, its ambassador, its lightning rod, and its housekeeper, all in one dark suit. Dot reads the announcement aloud at breakfast in Mrs. Hurley's kitchen, and Mrs. Hurley says it's about time somebody Christian took the broom to that business, and Dot says straight-faced that Mr. Hayes' first official act will surely be to find out who drank Mrs. Hurley's cooking sherry. And there is a silence you could photograph, and you drink your coffee very fast and are out the door before the verdict. On the lot, nobody laughs about Mr. Hayes. The people upstairs wanted him, paid for him, and are loudly glad of him, because he is the alternative to 32 censorship bills and worse. But everyone understands what his hiring means, all the way down to the mending table. It means the industry has agreed, formally, before the whole country, that it must never again be caught being what it is. Not that it must change exactly, that it must not be caught. The distinction is the whole year in a sentence, and nobody says the sentence out loud, and everybody knows it by heart. And the clause spreads. That is the spring's real weather under the orange blossom. Contract by contract, renewal by renewal, the morality clause goes into the paper of this town the way steel went into buildings after the great fires, quietly, universally, and forever. The language varies from studio to studio, and it does not matter, because the meaning never varies. Conduct offending public morals or tending to bring the artist into public disrepute, and the studio, at its sole discretion, may end everything with a letter. At its sole discretion. Read those 4 words again, the way the lawyers read them. Not a court's discretion, not a jury's, with its 10-2 mercies. The studio decides what offends, and the studio decides what disrepute is, and the studio is a building full of men whose own conduct could not survive its own clause, and everyone signs, because the line at the gate is 400 deep by 6 in the morning and gets longer every train. Jack Ashton signs his renewal the 2nd week of March. You know, because the fitting for his new picture is that Thursday, and he stands on the platform in the little mirrored room while Mr. Kessler chalks his shoulders, and he is easy and funny with the fitters the way he always is, and his weight is down 4 pounds from November, which the tape knows and the fan magazines never will. And when Mr. Kessler asks after his plans, he says, in a voice with nothing in it, that Miss Vane and he may motor down to Coronado where the picture wraps, and Mr. Kessler says they will photograph very nicely, Mr. Ashton. And for 1 second, the 2 men look at each other in the mirror, and something passes between them that is not Taylor and actor, and then it has passed, and the chalk moves on. You are on your knees at the platform edge with pins in your mouth, and you keep your eyes on the trouser break, and you keep the seams on the inside. It is the last week of March when Mr. Brant sends for you again. His office is in the front building, behind the carpets, a corner room with 2 windows and no photographs in it at all, which you notice because every other office in this industry is papered with them. He is standing at the window when the secretary shows you in, and on the desk lies a manila envelope, sealed, unaddressed, about the size of a folded shirt. Miss Cotter, you know the Bradbury building downtown. I can find it. Room 412. You'll ask for Mr. Pike. You'll give him this, and he'll give you a parcel, and you'll bring the parcel to me. You'll take the 2 o'clock car, and you'll be back by 5. A beat. Mr. Kessler tells me you don't read what you carry. I so, Mr. Brant. Something moves at the corner of his mouth, not warmth exactly, but a recognition, one professional to another. So does the whole town, he says, which you will understand later and do not understand now, and he hands you the envelope, and its weight tells you, whatever you decline to think about it, that what is inside is money. The Bradbury building is on Broadway at 3rd, and it is the strangest, beautiful building in this city. Plain brick outside and inside a canyon of light. 5 stories of iron balconies and open cage elevators under a whole roof of glass. The ironwork painted rose and black, wet-looking in the skylight glare. Your boots ring on the stair tiles. Room 412 has a door of frosted glass with no name painted on it. And Mr. Pike, when he opens to your knock, is a large, soft grey man, grey suit, grey face, the face of a person who has been left out of the weather for years, and behind him you can see a table, and on the table a photographer's enlarger, hooded, and steel cabinets with small drawers, many small drawers, each with its little brass frame for a label, and every frame empty. He does not ask who you are. People like Mr. Pike never have to. He takes the envelope and he counts what is in it behind a half-turned shoulder, unhurried, licking his grey thumb, and it takes him a long time, long enough to tell you the denominations are not large. Someone was careful even about that, bills that no bank would remark. Then he hands across a parcel wrapped in black paper and tied with string, flat, stiff, about 12 inches by 10, and its weight is the weight of glass. Photographic plates, 4 of them, 5 by the heft, and a whisper slide inside the wrapping that is paper, letters, a small bundle of letters riding on top of the glass. "Tell your Mr. B," says Mr. Pike in a voice like a hinge in need of oil, "that this concludes it. Concludes, tell him. I keep my word when I'm paid to the figure." He looks at you then, really looks, grey eyes with nothing at all behind them, and he adds, "Because such men cannot help adding it. Careful going down the stairs, girlie. All this iron. The glass weighs 9 pounds, and it weighs 900. You carry the parcel flat against your body on the red car home, both arms across it like a schoolgirl's books, and you look out the window at the oil derricks nodding, and you decline, with a discipline that cost you something real, to wonder what is on 4 photographic plates and a bundle of letters worth an unmarked envelope of small bills. You're aware only, in the body, where knowledge lives before the mind admits it, of what neighbourhood the address in the corner of your eye belonged to when the wrapping shifted. A house off Franklin. That is all. That is enough. You put it away, in the drawer in yourself that has no windows, and you watch the bean fields. Mr. Brandt is waiting in his office, and he does not open the parcel while you stand there. He weighs it in his 2 hands exactly as you did, and something in his shoulders lets down a half-inch, and he says, "Thank you, Miss Cotter." And then, as you reach the door, "Miss Cotter, you'll take an envelope of your own on payday. Buy the boots first." And you flush to your hairline. Boots. He had priced you too. Everyone in this trade prices everyone. And you go, and you do not see the parcel again, except that you do. Once. 2 evenings later. It is nearly 7, the light long and orange down the alleys of the lot, the racks casting shadows like bare orchards, and Mr. Kessler keeps you late over a beaded bodice, and at 1:15 he sets down his needle and says, not looking up, "The furnace wants tending. Take the basket." The burn basket is by the back door where it always is. On top of the scraps, wrapped in black paper, tied with string, lies the parcel from the Bradbury building, and on top of the parcel a small bundle of letters, tied separately in a man's narrow hand, and the string on both has been retied, in a knot you know. You have watched that knot all year at the cutting table, checked then and counted, plate by plate, letter by letter, by the only man in this factory whom both sides trusted to certify that what was bought was all there was. The fitting room has no windows. It has, it turns out, a furnace. You carry the basket out into the orange evening. The incinerator door shrieks on its hinge the way it always does. You lay the scraps in, and then the letters, and then, one by one, the plates, and you do not hold them to the light, and you want it said plainly of you, 40 years from now when you tell nobody about this. It was not virtue, and it was not fear, or not only. It was that some part of you had come to understand that looking would have been one more theft from two people who had already been stolen from enough. Silk goes up green at the edges. Paper goes in a soft yellow gust. Glass does not burn. The emulsion lifts off the plates in grey curling ash like the skin of a ghost, and the glass itself only cracks, once each, small dry reports in the raw, and afterward you rake the pieces down among the coals, and they are only glass, anonymous, innocent, done. Smoke, thin and dark, goes up over the wardrobe building, over the drying racks and the water tower, into a sky the colour of apricots, and somewhere across the lot Paul Weiss is playing for the last set-up of the day. You can just hear it under the hammering. Something slow, and you stand at the iron door with the rake in your two sooty hands, 19 years old, watching the smoke of other people's tenderness climb out of Hollywood, and you think the thought that makes this whole year finally simple. Nobody ever bought a secret to keep it. Mr. Kessler said so, and Mr. Kessler is never wrong about anything smaller than a war. But that is not what this was. This town buys back its own, when it can, at unmarked prices, and burns them unread in its own backyards. Not out of love, out of business. And yet with the ash going up all gold in the last light, you would defy an archangel to stand here and tell you, with a straight face, which is which. You bank the fire. You wash your hands with the yellow soap till they sting. Then you go home, and you say nothing, world without end, to anyone. On the 12th of April, 1922, a Wednesday, the third Arbuckle jury goes out at 5 minutes past 5 o'clock and is back in 6 minutes. 6 minutes, and part of that, the foreman will tell the reporters, was spent writing. Because this jury does not simply acquit Roscoe Arbuckle. This jury, 12 citizens who have sat through the whole wreck at last with all the evidence in front of them, hands up a written statement, and the statement is read into the record and printed in every paper in the United States, and it says, acquittal is not enough. It says a grave injustice has been done to Roscoe Arbuckle, that he is entirely innocent and free from all blame, and it wishes him success, and it says the American people should take the word of the 12 of them for it. In 7 months of shouting, it is the single loudest thing anyone has said in that man's defence, and it is said by the only 12 people in America who were obliged to listen before speaking. The lot hears it by telephone within the hour, and something happens that you will never forget. Applause. Scattered, then general, out of the cutting rooms and down the alleys between the stages, grips and painters and office girls coming out of doorways clapping, a couple of the cowboys sailing their hats, and Mrs. Novak crying frankly into her apron at the machine, because whatever else the year has taught them, here is proof at last that the truth, weighed fairly, can still outweigh the shouting. 6 days later, on the 18th of April, Mr. Hayes bans Roscoe Arbuckle from the screen. It is announced gravely, in the language of responsibility, a temporary measure in the industry's larger interest. His finished pictures, bought and paid for, are shelved. His contract is dead. The man the jury called blameless in writing is, within a week of the writing, unemployable in the only trade he has, and the trade that did it is his own, and it did it not because it believed him guilty, but because it could not afford him innocent. The clubs and the pulpits had already rendered their verdict, and the industry, this new, frightened, Hayes-era industry, has decided once and for all which verdict it answers to. Nobody applauds in the alleys that day. People read it standing, fold the paper, and go back through their doors. It is Dot, of all people, who says the true thing. That evening, the two of you walking up Cahuenga in the blue dark with your suppers from the drugstore counter, and she says it in a voice you have not heard her use before, with no dryness in it anywhere. You see what they did, Ruthie. They didn't ask was it true. They asked will it photograph. 12 people swore it wasn't true in writing, and it didn't matter because the picture of the man was already ruined, and this business sells the picture. She walks a few steps. The crickets are loud in the vacant lots. So now everybody knows the rule. Doesn't matter what you did, matters what they can print. There isn't a soul on that lot who didn't do that arithmetic today at their own desk. Every single one of them thinking, what could they print about me? And when I say every single one, I need you to understand who heard that lesson most clearly. Not the drinkers. Drink can be forgiven in America. It is practically a citizenship requirement now that it's illegal. Not the gamblers, not the divorced. The lesson went home hardest to the people whose whole private truth, harmless, tender, entirely unphotographed, was itself the unprintable thing. The men as women who had learned, some of them years before, to stand a certain careful distance apart at parties, who kept a second bedroom furnished and never slept in it for the sake of the help, who let the magazines call them bachelors wedded to art, dashing men in no hurry, handsome women too devoted to mother to marry. For them, the Arbuckle Spring said it in letters of fire. Innocence is not a defence. There is no acquittal for you, because there will be no trial, only a photograph, a caption, a clause, and a letter beginning with regret. You think of a man on a fitting platform 4 pounds down saying Coronado will photograph nicely. You do not applaud either. The engagement of Jack Ashton and Lila Vane is announced the 3rd week of May by the studio through Mr. Brandt's office in time for the June fan magazines. The item says 2 young players thrown together at the studio discovered a deep companionship. It says no date has been set. Both those sentences you happen to know are perfectly true, which is Mr. Brandt all over. Never lie where the truth can be arranged to do the work. You're in the fitting room for the engagement photographs, because of course there is a fitting for an engagement. There is a fitting for everything now. Lila Vane stands on the platform in a suit of dove-grey gabardine you helped cut, and Mrs. Novak works the shoulder seam, and you kneel at the hem, pins at 1/4-inch intervals, and Lila watches herself in the long mirror with those tired, clever eyes, turning a 1/4 turn at a time as she's asked, and there is no publicity man in the corner, there is only the truthful room, and after a while she says conversationally to the mirror, "My mother back in Paducah has my picture from the paper on the mantel. Wrote me she always knew I'd land a good man." A 1/4 turn. Jack sent her a wire on her birthday. "Signed it, son. She cried for 2 days, my sister says." Mrs. Novak works on, saying nothing, her mouth full of pins. You work on. The room is quiet, with that particular fitting room quiet, cloth and breath and the small tick of the mantel clock. And Lila looks down, at you, at the 2 of you, the invisible women at her hems, and being who you are, the women who know, the women in whose burn basket some part of her arranged life once lay wrapped in black paper, though she may not know that and you will never say, she tells the mirror the rest. He's a good man, is the joke of it. The best-mannered man I ever worked with. We laugh at the same things. He never once lets me pay for anything or open a door, and when my brother wired for money in March, Jack sent it before I'd finished asking, and wouldn't hear about it again. That's more than half the real marriages in this town can say. The clock ticks. And we understand each other. Nobody watching either one of us. Ever. You know what that's worth at my age in this business? She smooths the gabardine at her hips with both hands, the gesture of a woman pricing her own armour. Whole thing's a costume, sure. Well, I've been cold, honey. Costume's warm. Then she laughs. At herself. At the mirror. And Mrs. Novak says, "Shoulders square, please, Miss Vane." And the moment folds itself away neat as a handkerchief. You'll think about that hour for the rest of your life, on and off, whenever the world gets simple about these things, whenever anyone talks as though there were only martyrs and liars in that town in those years and nothing in between. There was a whole civilization in between, built at exactly that hour, in exactly such rooms, arrangements, companionships, treaties of mutual shelter, kindness inside falsehood, inside kindness, all the way down, everybody a little warmer and a little more hidden than they would have chosen in a better country. 2 costumes each. And some of them wore the second costume so long, with such grace, that no one, maybe not even they, could say by the end where the seam ran. Paul Weiss leaves Meridian the first week of June. There is no scene. That is the point of how it is done. There is never a scene. His contract is simply not renewed for the new season. Economies, the front office says, the pictures being fewer this summer, and it is even true the way Mr. Brandt's sentences are true. A boy from the office carries a cheque out to the stage where Paul is packing his violin, and the cheque, Dot reports from the ledger with her eyebrows at her hairline, is for 8 weeks, which is 4 more than anyone is owed, and attached to it is a letter of reference on studio paper praising his musicianship in language warm enough to get him hired anywhere on the coast, signed in his own hand, not stamped, Carl Brandt, by the boots first. So does the whole town. You are learning to read the man, which does not mean forgiving him. Mr. Brandt ruins people gently, in good order, with severance and references, the way a first-class surgeon amputates, and he would tell you, evenly, that the alternative to the surgeon is the mob. And the terrible thing, the thing that keeps you up some nights listening to the crickets, is that in the year 1922 in this town, he might be right. Paul comes by wardrobe on his last afternoon to return 2 dress collars, which he could have sent by the boy. He stands at the counter in his good suit with his violin case, thin, pleasant, contained, and he thanks Mr. Kessler for every kindness in that formal Cincinnati German way. And Mr. Kessler shakes his hand across the counter and holds it 1 moment longer than a handshake and says, "A musician eats anywhere, Herr Weiss. Theatres, orchestras, anywhere at all. This," the bald head tilts a fraction, taking in the lot, the water tower, the whole glittering machine. "This is not the only place where music is wanted. It is only the loudest." "So I'm told," Paul says. Nothing else. But at the door he pauses and looks back down the long room. The racks like hedgerows, the irons, the mirrors, the burn basket by the back door. And for a second his eyes rest on you, the mending girl, and you will never know what he knew or guessed about black paper and string and a furnace in the orange evening. He nods, the small courteous nod of his trade, to the room in general, and he is gone, down the alley between the stages, violin case swinging small at the end of his arm, and Jack Ashton is on location at Lone Pine that whole week, 300 miles of desert away, which is, you understand at last, also how it is done. That night, sorting the collar drawer, you find your mind going back unbidden to a fog-white morning in November, a square of Irish linen hand-rolled, laundered by somebody who cared. P. You had thought nothing then. You think everything now. It was 7 months teaching you to read one monogram, 2 costumes each. Keep the seams on the inside. Summer comes down on the basin like a lid of gold. The lot bakes. The backlot streets shimmer. The plaster mission fronts crack and are patched and crack again. The paint shop smells like a lit match all day, and the enclosed stages under their canvas diffusers turn into ovens where extras in Arctic furs, because pictures pay no attention to seasons, faint at the rate of 1 or 2 a day, and are carried into the shade and fanned and paid their $5 all the same. Wardrobe fights mildew, moth, and sweat in that order. You learn the summer arts. Cotton wads at the armpit of a costume worth guarding, salt rings sponge with vinegar water, the pressing room at 6 in the morning before the irons make it unbearable. The town outside bakes too and grows. It never stops growing. That's the vertigo of it. Through everything, the trials, the murder, the sermons, the ruin, the money keeps pouring west and the streets keep pushing north into the canyons, and the real estate men have begun hammering their tract signs right up into the scrub of the hills, white letters the size of doors. The district is filling in around the studios like tide around rocks. On a Sunday evening in the middle of July, Mrs. Novak knocks at Mrs. Herlihy's front door in her black church dress and her good hat, and informs you, not asks, that you are coming with her and that the walk will do you good, and you go because obeying Mrs. Novak is a habit of the muscles now. She takes you west along Franklin in the long amber light, then up, into a dirt road that climbs between pepper trees and half-built bungalows into a fold of the hills called Daisy Dell, where, this summer, for the first time, something remarkable is happening. The picture people and the music people and the ladies' committees have together gotten up a season of concerts in the open air, in the bottom of the dell, where the hills make a natural shell of the ground and the sound. Symphonies under the stars, the bills call it. It opened the 11th of July. Admission is 25 cents, which is to say admission is for everyone. The mending girls and the millionaires on the same dusty slope, on benches and blankets, under the same sky. But Mrs. Novak does not stop at the gate. She climbs, breathing like a bellows and refusing your arm, up the west slope above the dell, up a goat path through the sagebrush and the dry gold grass, to a flat rock the size of a table, and she sits herself down on it and pats the stone beside her, and you sit, and then you see why she brought you. The whole world is underneath you, the dell at your feet filling with people small as seeds, their lanterns coming on one by one as the dusk rises. Beyond it Hollywood, laid out flat and complete like a map of itself. The boulevard a double string of lights being lit even as you watch. The studio water towers standing up out of the grid, and you can find meridians. You can find the wardrobe building's own roof, the size of a matchbox, the size of a stamp. Beyond that, the whole basin, miles on miles going blue with evening, downtown's towers small and violet in the southeast, and beyond everything, closing the world like a silver seam, the sea, with the sun going down into it red as a coal, and the black hump of Catalina Island lying on the horizon like a sleeping animal. From up here you can see the fields too, the orange groves in their dark squares, the bean fields, the oil derricks. From up here it is perfectly plain what this place actually is. One strange, bright crust of dream laid thin over farmland. 10 years old, 12, no older, and you say something like that out loud, and Mrs. Novak nods and takes off her good hat and sets it in her lap. Then the orchestra, far below, tunes that lovely rising nowhere sound and begins to play. and the music comes up the slope of the hill to the two of you, thin and clear and late, like light from a star. I was younger than you, Mrs. Novak says to the basin, to nobody, when I came to Vienna to sew, then Prague, then Berlin, then the boat, then New York, then here. Everywhere the same, girl. Everywhere, the beautiful ones in front of the lights, and behind the lights, us, the ones who hold the pins. She turns her head and looks at you, and her old eyes have the sunset in them. You're angry this year. You think I don't see. Since the winter. Angry at the ones upstairs, at the newspapers, at the claws, at all of it. What they make people do. What they make people hide. Good. Be angry. It means the eyes work. The music climbs, faint and silver. But I tell you what 50 years of the pins taught me, and then we listen, and I shut up. Every age they decide something people must be a secret. Something different every age, every country, but always something, and always they are wrong, and always it changes, slower than it should, faster than you fear. And while it changes, people do not stop living. That is the thing the angry young never believe, and it is the only comfort I have to sell. Down there. Her chin points at the basin, the 10,000 lamps coming on. Under every third roof, somebody is living a life the neighbours must not know. And they live it anyway. They find the room. They find the friends. They find the little streets. They are finding them tonight. Life is like water, girl. The rules are like stones. Water loses every argument with the stones, every one, and the water wins in the end, always, everywhere. It just wins slow. She puts her hat back on and settles it with two pats, exactly level. Now be quiet. This is Dvořák, and he is from home. You sit on the warm rock in the dark beside an old woman from Bohemia, and below you the first Hollywood bowl season sends its music up out of the ground, and the lights of the whole invented town burn on the flat dark like a spilled constellation, and you are more than 2 years from the Terre Haute depot, and you hold your knees and listen, and something in you that has been clenched since a terrace in December lets down 1/2 inch, like a shoulder when the parcel is finally weighed. You're a cog still, the smallest wheel in the machine. But you're here. You're part of it. The whole impossible, glittering, unforgivable thing. And from this rock, at this height, at this hour, you can hold all of it in one look and almost forgive it. Almost is enough to sleep on. You've learned that this year too. August, and the season turns without turning, the way it does here. The light going a degree more slanted, the nights a degree more blue. Dot is promoted off the lot, in a manner of speaking, loaned to a bigger company in Culver City for one enormous costume picture at $40 a week. Script girl to a director whose name even Mrs. Herlihy pronounces respectfully, and she comes home the first Friday electric with it, and the second Friday exhausted by it, and both Fridays you sit up late with Coco and she tells you everything, and the room would be lonely except she talks enough for the whole week in 2 nights. At Meridian there is a new girl at the mending table beside yours, Inez, 16, out of El Paso by way of a casting line. She stood in for 5 months before hunger made her sensible. Quick little hands and eyes that still flinch when anyone of consequence walks through wardrobe. The first week she sews a hook, set crooked on a cape for Miss Vane, and it is you, not Mr. Kessler, who catches it, and unpicks it, and shows her, and the look she gives you, that mix of shame and rescue. You know that look. You wore it. You wore it in this room, at that table, 2 years ago, when the hands that caught your crooked hook belonged to Mrs. Novak. It gets easier, you tell her, and are startled to hear it come out of your mouth in Mrs. Novak's exact cadence. Flat and certain, a stone laid down. It does get easier. That's the strange mercy of any trade. The hands learn, the eyes learn, the fear moves out a room at a time. In September, Mr. Kessler raises you to $18 a week without being asked, which is how he does everything, and you take the 2 envelopes, that week's and the memory of Mr. Brandt's, and you finally visit the cobbler, and then, in a shop on the boulevard with a girl your own age dying of boredom behind the counter, you buy new boots outright. Black kid, $4.50. The first shoes of your whole life that no one wore before you. You wear them out of the shop and carry the old ones in the box, and you walk down Hollywood Boulevard in the September sun clicking like a rich woman, past the hoardings at Grauman's Egyptian, where the paint is going on the great columns now, and the men are rigging the forecourt gates. And the sign says opening in October, and you stop and look up at it. The whole absurd Pharaoh's palace rising at the corner of a farm town, and you think, 2.5 years ago, I stood off that train with $11, and now I am standing in unworn boots watching them build a temple to the pictures 3 blocks from my own door. Whatever else this year is doing, it is doing it to everyone at once, top to bottom. The fear and the building, the burying and the building, both at full speed, both with both hands. That is this town, that is the whole business, and October is coming. And October, it turns out, has saved the biggest night of all for last. On the 18th of October, 1922, a Wednesday, Sid Grauman opens his Egyptian Theatre on Hollywood Boulevard with the premiere of Douglas Fairbanks in Robin Hood. And the town where the pictures are made holds, for the first time in its existence, a real premiere of its own. The first one, ever. Everything that word will come to mean. The searchlights, the roped crowds, the stars arriving like royalty 3 blocks from where they get their teeth filled. All of it happens for the first time on this one night, on this one block, and you are there. You're there because Lila Vane is there, and Lila Vane, being now 1/2 of the most photographed engagement of the Meridian lot, goes to such a night dressed by Mr. Kessler's department in $800 of bottle green pan velvet, and $800 of pan velvet does not go anywhere without a dresser. Miss Vane asked for you by name. You ride ahead with the wraps and the kit in the second car. And so it happens that at 7 o'clock, while the boulevard is still filling, you are standing inside the forecourt of the strangest building in America, with a needle case in your pocket, watching the last great set of this story light up. And it is a set. That is the delicious secret of it. The Egyptian is a picture set that will not be struck, built by picture people with picture logic. A long open forecourt like a temple approach, walls rising sheer, a colonnade down one side with 4 massive columns, murals of gods with the paint a week old, and over the bronze entrance doors a winged scarab spreading gilded wings 4 feet across. Tickets for tonight are $5, which is a day's wage for an extra, and there is not a seat to be had for money. They say the house holds 1,700 and could have sold it 5 times over. On the roof, against the first stars, a man in Bedouin robes paces the parapet with a rifle, calling the quarter hours, because Mr. Grauman understands better than any man alive what business this town is actually in. The ushers wear Egyptian dress. The air in the forecourt smells of fresh paint, gardenias, arc carbon, and money. By 7:30, the boulevard outside is a solid, roaring, good-natured sea. Thousands, then more thousands, pressed against the ropes, standing on the roofs of parked cars, boys up the lamp-posts like squirrels, and the great searchlights, war surplus, swing their blue-white blades across the sky, and the whole crowd's face swings up together to watch the beams cross and part and cross. From where you stand just inside the forecourt gates, the crowd is a single creature with 10,000 eyes, and every time a motorcar pulls to the curb, the creature leans and roars or doesn't, and the roar itself is information. A 2-second roar is a director, a 5-second roar is a star. And then, at 8, comes a roar that doesn't stop, that builds and rolls and feeds on itself, and that is Fairbanks himself, arriving at his own conquest, teeth like a lighthouse, and the flash powder goes off along the ropes like a running battle, lightning after lightning after lightning, until the whole forecourt smells of scorched aluminum, and the smoke drifts through the searchlight beams in slow silver ropes. You watch it from the edge beside a potted palm with the needle case in your pocket. Always from the edge. That is your whole year, and tonight you understand that the edge is the best seat in the house, because from the edge you can see both halves at once. The crowd's face, upturned, rapturous, believing, and the machinery's face, the men at the ropes, the press agents steering their people the last 10 feet. The exact second-hand choreography of who arrives after whom. Jack Ashton and Lila Vane arrive at 8:10 together, to a good long roar, and the creature leans, and 200 flashes go off, and the picture that will run coast to coast is being made right there in front of you, at 1/250th of a second. The beautiful pair on the temple steps, his hand correct at her elbow, her chin at the angle that finds the light, both of them laughing at something, and here is the thing. The thing you alone at this whole premiere can fully price. The laugh is real. You watch them become actual friends across 10 months of manufactured evenings. The lie has a true friendship living inside it now, the way a plaster set has honest lumber inside, and which of those is the building you have given up deciding. And then the small disaster, because there is always the small disaster. It is a law of cloth. Coming up the steps, Lila's heel finds her own hem, and 8 inches of $800 velvet lets go at the waist seam with a sound only 3 people on earth could have heard, and one of them is you, already moving, because this is your scene now. This is what the needle case is for. The manager's office off the forecourt, borrowed in 15 seconds flat. Miss Vane up on the desk like a fitting platform, laughing till she shakes, which does not help. You on your knees with the pins in your mouth and 11 minutes to curtain, whipping the seam with silk twist. Small stitches, invisible at 9 feet tall, invisible at 9 inches, while outside the door the roars keep arriving in waves, and Mrs. Novak's voice in your head keeps the count of the stitches, and at 8:26 Miss Vane steps down, shakes out the velvet, checks the mirror, and finds your eyes in it. "There's not a soul out there who'll ever know," she says. "No, ma'am," you say around the last pin. "There isn't." She looks at you 1 beat longer in the mirror, that clever tired look, and the whole year passes between you without one word of it being said, and then she squeezes your hand hard once and goes out to be photographed. The doors close at 8:30. The crowd stays anyway, the whole vast creature settling itself against the ropes to wait the picture out, just to see the faces come back through the doors at 11. You should go home. The wraps are checked, the kit repacked. The second car waits down a side street with the driver asleep already. Instead you stand in the emptying forecourt in the searchlight-crossed dark, and through the bronze doors, dimly, you hear the house lights go down, 1,700 people going quiet at once. a sound like the sea taking a breath. And then the orchestra begins. They have a full orchestra in there, 30 men in the pit for the run of the picture, and you knew, because Dot found it out from the ledger of gossip that runs this town beneath all other ledgers, that when the contractor for the Egyptians' pit hired his violins in September, one of the names was Weiss. Steady work, union scale, 6 days a week, in the dark, at the foot of the screen. Anywhere at all, Mr. Kessler said. This is only the loudest. Through the doors now comes the overture, muffled in gold, trumpets, the picture beginning, Fairbanks Castle, 90 feet of it, filling the screen you cannot see. You stand outside in the forecourt among the potted palms and hear it the way you have heard this entire year, through a wall from the edge, and you find you are smiling, and you couldn't fully tell an archangel why. He is in there, in the dark, at the foot of the biggest lie ever built in this town, playing it true, being paid on Friday. And somewhere above him in the loges, invisible to each other, a man in evening dress sits beside his fiancée, with his face turned up into the silver light. Between them, 40 feet of dark, a pit rail, an orchestra, a clause, a country. And the music rises through all of it anyway and fills the house from the floor up. The one thing in the whole building that no camera can photograph, and no column can print, and no clause can reach. Water and stones, girl. Water and stones. Past 11, the doors open, and the crowd gets its faces and roars itself hoarse. And the boulevard does not fully empty until nearly 1. And the last thing you see, from the corner of the side street while the driver brings the car around, is the man in Bedouin robes up on the parapet, small against the sinking searchlights, pacing his rounds above the town like a sentry over a city that has decided, cost what it costs, to stand. You ride home with the empty gown across your knees like a sleeping animal, through streets full of people walking home talking all at once, the whole town up past its bedtime and pleased with itself. And Dot is awake when you come in. Of course she is. And you sit on the floor between the beds in your coat and your good boots and tell her everything. The scarab and the rifle and the roars, the velvet and the 11 minutes. All of it. Everything. Except one violin. Some things you keep. You've learned that this year. Not everything carried quietly is a burden. Some of it is just yours. November comes back around, and with it the fogs, and one grey soft morning you realise, counting stitches at your table, that it has been a year since the telephone in the hall dragged you out of sleep before dawn, a year since a square of Irish linen taught you nothing at all, and then, slowly, everything. The lot goes on. That is what lots do. It is the deepest thing about them. The Silver Rider opened in the spring and did well in the neighbourhoods, and 2 pictures have shipped since, and 2 more are cutting, and the hammering has not stopped once, not one single working day, in the year you have been listening to it. The churchyard set came down in August. Its lumber is a saloon now, and half a steamship. Nothing on a backlot is ever wasted, and nothing is ever finished. And there is a comfort in that which you could not have explained to the girl who got off the train. The people go on too, each along their seam. Mr. Kessler cuts. 60 years old, and the shears go through the winter velvets without a sound, and the black book at the end of the table grows a few pages thicker, and keeps its measurements, and keeps its counsel, and some evening decades from now, when he dies an old man in his bed, it will be found that he left instructions, and the instructions will be a single line, and every wardrobe hand who ever trained under him will know before reading it what the line says. The furnace, unread, naturally. Mrs. Novak sews and rules the machines, and on fine Sundays she climbs, slower each month, to a flat rock over Daisy Dell. And you go with her when she knocks, and you have learned to bring a cushion for the stone and to say nothing about bringing it. Dot comes back from Culver City in November with her big picture finished and her name, her actual name, typed in a studio document under the word script clerk, and she puts her thumb on it like a woman pressing a seal into wax, and buys the cocoa both Fridays that month herself. Inez sews a hem you could not tell from your own now. You told her it gets easier, and it was true, and watching her hands stop flinching has been one of the quiet good things of the fall. Mr. Brandt is in his corner office with no photographs in it, and his machine hums on, gentle and terrible, and will hum for 30 years more, and you carry no more parcels for him, because he has never asked again, and you have thought about why. Some nights, and have decided that a man who prices everyone correctly knew the exact weight of what he spent on you, and knew it was a coin he could spend only once. And Jack Ashton and Lila Vane dine where they can be seen, and are photographed, and are kind to each other, which was never in the contract. And in the dark at the foot of the boulevard's great silver screen, a violin plays 6 nights a week, union scale, and the fan magazines this month are asking, coyly, whether wedding bells will ring at Meridian in the spring. And the studio is letting them ask, because a question that sells magazines is worth more than any answer. You do not yet know how long the machine you watched being built this year will run, that the clause in the contracts will outlive everyone who signed the first ones, that the fear that was poured like a foundation in this one frightened year will hold up a whole architecture of silence for longer than your lifetime, that men and women not yet born will stand in fitting rooms not yet built, learning the same 2 costumes, keeping the same seams inward for decades after the names Arbuckle and Taylor and Hayes have gone soft at the edges like old newsprint. You don't know any of that, and it is not yours to fix tonight. And Mrs. Novak's arithmetic stands over all of it like the hills over the dell. The water loses every argument with the stones, every single one, and the water wins in the end. It just wins slow. Somewhere far down that slow river there is a year when the hiding ends, and it is farther away than anyone deserves and nearer than the frightened men upstairs believe. And between here and there, under every third roof, life goes on being lived anyway, tender and careful and stubborn as thread. What is yours tonight is smaller than all that, and better. It is a Saturday evening, the last of November, and the shop closed at 6, and you have eaten Mrs. Herlihy's pot roast, which was, by the mercy of God, actually pot roast, and you have washed your hair and dried it at the parlour fire, while Dot read out the terrible parts of a terrible serial, and now you are up in the room, in the lamplight, and the fog is coming down Cahuenga soft as batting, and the eucalyptus outside the window drips its slow drops on the sill, one, and after a while another, like a clock too old to hurry. You kneel at the wardrobe and count the jar, not because you need to, because the counting is a Saturday rite by now, like your mother winding her clocks, $61. 11 of it went home in October, and the letter that came back smelled of the kitchen, of home, of a world where none of what you know is known, and you sat on the bed and held the paper to your face for a while. And that was that. And the jar has filled again, dollar by dollar, the way jars do when the hands earn steady. $61, a paid-up cobbler, boots no one wore before you, a trade in your fingers that no panic and no clause and no committee can vote out of them. You bank the little gas heater. You hang the grey skirt, brushed, on its hook, and the navy coat over it, and you smooth the coat's shoulder once with the flat of your hand, the way Mr. Kessler smooths a finished thing, the small pat that means done and done right. Then you're in the narrow iron bed in the dark, under the extra blanket that Mrs. Herlihy grumbled up out of the cedar chest last week, because she's stony and warm in strict alternation, and Dot's breathing across the room has already gone slow and even, and the fog folds the street lamp outside into a soft blurred pearl, and the town goes quiet around you, ring by ring, the boulevard first, then the side streets, then the canyons, the whole lit basin banking its fires. And you lie there warm, doing the thing you do now instead of worrying, the thing this year taught you without ever announcing the lesson. You go around the day like a wardrobe girl going down a rack, garment by garment, checking the seams. The morning fog on the walk to the car, checked. The smell of the pressing room, hot metal and clean cotton, that you will love the rest of your life in whatever building you meet it, checked. Inez's hem straight as scripture. Mr. Kessler's 10 seconds of silence over the winter velvet, which is a parade. Mrs. Novak's thimble tapping the machine table time. Dot's thumb pressed on her own typed name. A silver dollar, long since spent, still warm somewhere in the counting. The green-edged flare of burning silk gone up an apricot sky. A tune that climbs one gentle hill and comes down the other side, resigned to it. Resigned, and lovely all the same, and still being played this very night, 3 blocks south, in the dark, at the foot of the light. All of it checked, all of it hanging straight. Nothing that cannot wait for morning. You're tired, and it is the good tiredness, the kind that comes up from the palms of your hands, from work done well, and witnessed by the only judges you answer to. Your hands ache the small honest ache of the needle, and the bed holds you, and the fog leans its soft grey weight against the glass like a friendly animal, and there is nothing left in this whole day that needs you awake for it. So let it settle. Let the year settle over you like good wool. You're warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You have a trade and a room and 2 friends and $61, and that is more than the girl on the train platform dared ask for, and that's enough. It's enough. It's enough. Tomorrow there will be fittings and fog and the count of the racks. Tomorrow Mr. Kessler will tell whoever comes through the door first that they are late, and they will not be late. Tomorrow the line at the gate will be 400 deep by 6, and the hammering will start with the light, and the whole bright machine will pick itself up and begin again. But that's tomorrow. Tomorrow can shift for itself. It always has. Right now there is only the lamp cooling, the fog at the glass, the eucalyptus counting its slow drops, and this bed, this breath, this settling. Let it come now. You can feel it coming, the sleep, rising the way the music rose through the floor of that dark and golden house, from underneath, filling everything. Let the boulevard dim. Let the searchlights lie down in their cradles. Let the racks stand quiet in the wardrobe building. The 800 pairs of shoes all still, the irons cooling in their rests, the shears crossed on the cutting table like something heraldic, the black book shut on all its faithful measurements, the furnace cold, the ash long gone up the flue and out over the roofs and into the sea fog, gone soft, gone grey, gone. Let the town sleep. All of it. The famous faces on their monogrammed linen and the mending girls under their cedar chest blankets, the frightened men in the corner offices and the couples in the little hidden streets off Franklin, the sentry on the parapet, the crowd gone home hoarse and happy, every soul in the lit basin, the watched and the watchers and the ones who hold the pins. Let every one of them set down what they carry, just until morning, even secret sleep. They curl up small and warm in the dark where they live, and they rest, and they are lighter to carry at dawn for having been set down. Let your hands go loose. They have held pins and hems and parcels and other people's tenderness all year, and held them well, and they can be empty now. Let your shoulders come down from around your ears, that half inch, then another. Let your thoughts slow and soften and lose their thread. The way voices blur through a fitting room wall, near and warm, and no longer any of your business. Centuries will pass. The town you know will change past all recognition. The bean fields will vanish under lights beyond counting. The bungalows will come down, and towers will stand where the pepper trees stood, and the studios themselves will be swallowed and renamed and swallowed again, the way kingdoms on a backlot always were. The claws will crumble. The silences will break, one by one, generation by generation, the water winning slow, exactly as the old woman on the rock said it would. The fitting rooms will empty. The great screens will multiply and shrink and follow people into their pockets like little lit familiars, and the whole roaring machinery of faces and belief will change its shape 100 times. But people will not change, not in the seams. People will still fall in love inconveniently, and guard what is tender, and find a room, and find the friends, and find the little streets. They will still do proper work with their hands, and stand back from it satisfied. They will still be kind in unphotographed ways. They will still sit up on warm rocks in the evening above the lights of their own invented cities, holding their knees, forgiving the world by inches. Some things don't change. The needle doesn't change. The thread doesn't change. The mending doesn't change. You take what is torn and you make it whole. And if you do it with enough love, no one will ever find the seam. So let it take you now. Let sleep take you the way the fog takes the boulevard, one soft lamp at a time. Let the world fade. Let the noise quiet. Let the last bright edges of the day go dim and kind. You've earned this rest. A year of mornings earned it, stitch by stitch by stitch. Take it, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.